coming along tonight. Really like to thank Ashton for being here with us tonight, because she has had the most exhausting week, I think, having been absolutely everywhere. And I don't know if anyone heard Ashton on Woman's Hour this week, or on Radio London. You were as well, were you today?
It was the Joe Good Show.
Yeah. So
BBC. I don't know which BBC. Apparently, I should know, but I don't.
So we're incredibly lucky to have Ashton with us tonight. I don't know how many of you have already read Ashton's book or have come across it. There are copies available outside. Tom will be very happy to share them with anyone who wants to see a copy. I don't want this to be the kind of format that I talk to Ashton and then we do a Q&A at the end, because this group is small enough and everyone in this room, I know, has got strong enough opinions that we can all just take part in a conversation. But I do want to start off by allowing Ashton to introduce herself a little bit, just for the people in the room who don't yet know why this chair rocks.
This chair rocks was because I had worked my way through various bad names for my blog and my project until I finally came to that one. Although I do, it is the title of the book and it is the title of my blog. But just as important are the words, A Manifesto Against Ageism. I have never ever had a plan about anything in my life. I didn't intend to be a writer, but then I was married for 11 years and realized I couldn't stay married, and found a lawyer who said, you know, a lot of my clients are people like you. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, women who are realizing they don't have to stick it out. And I went home and found out in 2 seconds that 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women. And it's been that way all the way forever. It's a well-known statistic, but I had assumed it was 98% men dumping their sad, old, wrinkly wives for fertile trophy versions. And that set me on a journey. The best thing about last year was that I was on a panel where anytime anyone said the word journey, everyone had to take a shot. So that set me on this journey to explore the discrepancy behind what my assumption and the facts. And that turned into my first serious book, which is called Cutting Loose: Why Women Who End Their Marriages Do So Well. Because we come into our own and become responsible for ourselves, as we do, I think, if we're lucky, when we're older. And 20 odd years later, not quite that long, much later, but in my mid-50s, I, again in hindsight, realized I was afraid of getting old. And I started researching longevity and learning about interviewing older workers, because that was my sort of safe way in. And again, within 5 minutes, learned all the data points with which I start my TED Talk. It's free, it's on the internet, it's short, today. And learned that everything I thought I knew about what it would be like to be really old was way off base or flat out wrong. And these are not cherry-picked, obscure data points from, Romanian journals. Sorry, I don't mean to diss Romania. But again, it was this, why don't we know these things? We don't know those things about divorce because we live, shocker, in a sexist, patriarchal, capitalist society, and we don't know these things about aging because we live in an ageist, sexist, capitalist patriarchy. That wasn't very much about me. Wasn't enough about me.
No,
so I backed into that, and then I had to write another book. I thought I would be a modern author. For a long time, I thought I'll just tweet and be on Facebook and blog, and I won't have to write another damn book. But then I did.
Yeah.
So, and here I am.
And when I first came across Ashton's book,
How did you find it?
Someone, and I'm a nightmare to remember.
I don't remember anything. So I never did.
Yeah. And that's nothing to do with age, that's just, that's always been the case, completely dippy.
We're so surrounded by admirers.
That's what it is.
It's,
So someone introduced me to your book, someone told me to read it, and I did read it. And the first thing that struck me about your book were the stages that we all go through when we first discover, oh, ageism, hang on a minute, no, that doesn't affect me, that doesn't exist. I mean, when I first discovered your book, I had not long started Goldie magazine, and I'd spent a year sending out hundreds of CVs to try and get some paid work. I'd applied for 3 PhDs and been turned down. I had tried to get a book deal and wasn't able to.
I had to self-publish my book, by the way. All the publishers turned it down. The HarperCollins had an option, and they said, "We're concerned that no one else is writing about this."
Yeah. Almost word for word the same rejection letter I got. They just send them out, don't they? Yeah.
Who knows?
So,
let's not go there.
Yeah, but it hadn't occurred to me it was anything to do with age. Had it occurred to you that there were any of these ages?
Well, if you write a book about ageism, yeah.
But prior to that.
And when it comes to the workforce, hello gender as well.
Yeah. So that sort of idea that when I first encountered the book, I was like, oh, well, I don't think I'm old enough really to be encountering ageism. Well, hang on, but that's just the way I feel. But is the rest of the world looking at me like that? So that sort of, and perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about those processes that we all go through in a way.
You go through it if you're willing to, and if you're. I mean, the first step is by far the worst, because I think you have to look at the fact that it does apply to you, and that you have been brainwashed by this culture, because we all have. We are all ageist, just as we're all filled with every other kind of prejudice as well. And we can't challenge bias unless we're aware of it, and ageism is just beginning to bleep onto the radar, So the book is full of new ideas to people. My favorite comment is sort of a version of what you said. It's like, X pages in, oh crap, I am ageist. I'm part of the problem. I'm complicit, which is a very unpleasant thing to realize. The good news is that right after that, you start to see ageism everywhere around you. I mean, I put up on Instagram something, we stopped off for a beer in an effort to get a Wi-Fi signal in an effort to locate our hotel, which we knew was close. And there in the bar, that just happened to be the one we was a sign about being carded for ID, and it started out, if you are lucky enough to look under 21, please produce your ID. 21!
Ridiculous.
And I like to point out that ageism is not only the only form of discrimination we all will encounter, we already have encountered it, because it is any judgment about someone or a group of people on the basis of how old we think they are, and kids experience a lot of it. And you could say that messages like that are a function of living. One of the reasons your 20s are really hard is because the culture would have us believe that the 20s are your peak decade, right? By the time, especially if you're a woman, right? By the time you hit 30, I was in London that I bought a birthday card 15 years ago that said, like most women my age, I'm 28 years old, right? So those messages, which are a function of ageism and sexism, are one of the things that make being in your 20s hard.
One of the things that I am really keen to do with what we're talking about is not to make this only about women.
Yeah.
That's kind of difficult in some ways, because having a glossy magazine, I'm always told that really I should only be talking to women about women because they're the people that buy magazines. But I want to make sure this conversation includes everybody. Now I know that, I think you say sometimes, I think I might say this in the book, that ageism is often the first point at which men have actually come up against those kind of barriers.
It's the first form of discrimination that many white men encounter.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think that some of those men will become important leaders of the movement, but I will push back a little bit and say that women are leading the movement, and we will continue to, because we have the most at stake. And the women's movement taught us to claim our power, but unless and until we also mobilize against ageism, we won't be able to hang on to it. And it's not that we don't have a lot to go, on this in the battle against sexism as well. That battle is never going to be led by men. Even the most well-meaning men benefit from patriarchy. White men benefit from patriarchy and racism, and no matter how well-meaning. I mean, I'm starting to get pushback from white guys who don't think I'm being nice enough to them, which frankly, I shouldn't say this, but I am, tells me I'm doing something right. It's like no one gives up power without a struggle. And so can I go on a little rant about us
go
girls?
on a rant. Please rant.
So back to the business of realizing that you're ageist. The tool that catalyzed the women's movement was consciousness raising. Women came together and compared notes and realized that what they had been thinking of as personal problems, my boss keeps patting my butt, I can't find a job, whatever it happens to be, were not personal problems but widely shared political problems that required collective action. And it is that shift in awareness. It's called cognitive liberation. That ties into the seeing it around you and going, holy crap, it's not, yes, I'm part of the problem in that I too am biased, but this is not my problem. It's not my problem that I got wrinkles. It's not my problem that my resumes weren't good enough for someone to answer 1 out of 300, right? The problem is institutionalized discrimination, compounded ageism. Susan Sontag called it the double standard of ageism. There are only 2 inevitable bad things about getting older. One is some part of your body is going to fall apart, and eventually more parts, but not all of it. And the other is that we are going to lose people we've known all our lives, which is one reason it's so important to make friends of all ages. I'm winking at my new younger friend there. She's, she loves me. You can't just grab a young person and say, hi, be my friend. Find something you like to do, and you all have this incredibly compelling, interest in common, and find a mixed age group to do it with, or drag in, say to someone who shares that interest, come to this store, come see this movie, come to this meeting, right? And then so it is only by coming together at all ages and doing consciousness raising. We don't talk about getting older. Menopause, you'd think it was a dirty word. And as long as we are silent about this, we reinforce stigma, right? And the model now is that women compete to stay young, which reinforces, you all know this, it reinforces the all-important idea. The most important thing about us is how we look. It reinforces ageism, it reinforces sexism, it reinforces patriarchy. We just dig the hole deeper. No judgment, no judgment, no judgment, no judgment. Everyone, we each have to do this in our own way, at our own speed, but as long as we do this, we dig the hole deeper.
That's right.
And we will never achieve equality, right? We will and if we don't challenge ageism and sexism, we'll dig it double deep, right? So I am imploring you, I'm exhorting you, to make sure that your workforce, if everyone around in the table is the same age, that's why.
Yeah.
But especially, literally, to make, on my website is a downloadable free guide called Who Me Ageist? How to Start a Consciousness Raising Group Around Age Bias. I am working on, I might have met the woman last night who will help me with it. I want it to be a person of color because it has to address race and class as well. A consciousness raising guide just for women around talking about aging, right? Because if more younger women were friends with powerful older women like us, guess what? They'd be a lot less afraid of getting older. And if more of us were friends with younger women, we would remember how hard it is to be young, and we would be more generous. So are you all as generous to the younger women around you as you could be,
Yes.
and as kind to the
Yes.
older women as you could be, and as non-judgmental as possible. I have I'll stop, let's do more questions, but there's a passage in here about looking at each other and ourselves more generously, which I could wrap up with, if you want.
Okay, all right.
Questions, whatever.
Yeah. So, yes, we can be more generous with
It's hard.
ourselves.
It's breaking a lifetime of habits, and it's the work of a lifetime, and it can only be entered into collectively.
I can believe this. I do stand-up comedy. I work with people that are in 18, 19, 20. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with seeing people that are older. When I look in the mirror, I want to kill myself. And what happened is Rebecca, you were there.
We all do.
Yeah,
Those moments.
shit, I didn't put on makeup. Not that it does any good. It lodges in the wrinkles and it takes. But, at least it makes me feel like I made an effort.
I know what
But
you
the
mean.
point is, I think of myself as being as not ageist as you can possibly be. A woman came to that conference who was 92. Did you see her?
Yeah.
And I was doing a bit about driving. And I said to her, do you still drive? And do you drive, something about driving, and she said, yes, I still drive. And I said, you drive? And I thought, shit.
But that is the essential first step. It's like, I'm still
You drive,
part of
she's
this.
92. And I thought, Jesus, I don't want to be on the road when you're on the road.
Don't worry, Prince Philip isn't driving anymore.
I don't drive anymore, but that's because in the States I always drove on the wrong side of the road. I probably would be very
scary,
successful over here. I'm afraid to try. But I wouldn't have stopped driving either. I haven't stopped anything.
Yeah.
But when I look in the mirror, and today I looked in the mirror and I was at the gym and I was doing, you have to understand that I am so fucking uncoordinated. I climbed a step and the guy said to me, oh, that was wonderful. I just climbed one fucking step. I could have gotten on the tube if I couldn't have done 10 of them. But the point is, it's the way they treat me and the way I allow them to.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
a
didn't
really
say
good-
to him,
all- yeah.
bugger off. I would have to be a snail not to be able to climb this step. I didn't say that. I said, thank you.
Well,
You've got this British politeness now, darling. You've been here so long.
Only 5 years. Only 5 years.
I mean, better than saying thank you is saying, why would you say that?
Why would you say that?
Why would you say that? That's a very neutral, because if you jump on someone's throat, and I wish I could follow my own advice all the time, but it's not like, of course I can climb the fucking step, but why would you say that? Why are you driving? Do you still drive? Why would you ask me that? Are you
That's
still
such
working?
no, and she looked at me. She said, I said, you
Yeah.
drive? She said,
Yeah.
I never stop.
Right.
And I said in a nice non-aged, oh my God.
So just put the question back on the person if you can. Right, and I have one good snappy answer, of all these years of thinking, to when someone says you look great for your age,
Yes.
Oh, I get angry
break
at
the
that.
habit.
Yeah.
It's really hard
Yeah.
of saying thank you. It's really hard, but when we say thank you, we reinforce the underlying idea. They mean you look young for your age, or you look young for your age. That younger is better, which is the root of all evil, obviously. We reinforce the idea that whatever old years we are, people look a certain way. We can only accept the compliment at the expense of all the other people our age who don't look quite as great as we do. And so, and we reinforce, the underlying ageism. So just say you look great for your age too.
I don't. I say this is what it looks like.
That's Laura Steinem's line.
And then they say, yeah, but you really look great. And I say, if I took off my clothes, you'd believe me.
You're
And
a
they
comedian.
say, don't take off your clothes, which I do. No, but that's the point. That's why I always say, this is what it looks like.
You had your hand up first.
Can I take you back to, I think it was the first thing that you said around, marriage. You were amazed to find that most marriages are ended by women. I'm amazed that you're amazed. But I know. But do you think that,
It was a while ago.
okay, do you think that ageism is enshrined in marriage, that it kind of starts from the beginning?
That's a good question. My book is not an anti-marriage book. It is a book about how hard it is to have an egalitarian marriage in a world that treats men. I'm assuming that that was what my readers aspire to. If it isn't, then it's not a book for you. It is really hard to have that in a world that treats men and women differently. It's not your husband's ally or yours. And ageism is part of that. It is part of ageism, and sexism serve patriarchy, which benefits from a power imbalance, a wage gap, all the rest of it between men and women. So it is built into the traditional the structure of traditional marriage, in which the woman serves the marriage and the marriage serves the man. If you can break free of that, I mean, I look at articles, just to take an example of a woman who's decided to have cosmetic surgery, and it's rarely, maybe they cherry pick it, but the husband says, I think you look beautiful just the way you are, and I think that's usually true. Woman decides to get gray, her husband says she looks great. It is the woman's women friends who say, want to rethink that? So I am thinking of this in heteronormative terms because I'm a straight woman, but we have to break this deeply misogynistic. Women are misogynist too, and that is an ugly truth. This shit is hard and painful to come to terms with, but if we don't, nothing is going to change.
Can I just say something about ageism? Because I think it's something, we have to accept we're getting old.
Absolutely.
And we shouldn't really be trying to compare ourselves to 20, 30, 40-year-olds. I mean, I'm 58, and I have no problem saying I'm 58. People say I look great for my age, and I go, well, my hair is my hair, this is how I am. And I see that as a compliment, but I also think there's got to be this. I think if you focus too much on the word age, then already you're going to start a kind of dichotomy.
That's a good point.
A dichotomy. There's something wrong with age, but I just think that yes, age is something that happens to everybody, and age is something that we should just take as part of the course because it happens. So we cannot compete with it. Why should I have a job like a 20-year-old? I'm not 20. You have to allow space for a 20-year-old to get old. You have to allow space for a 30-year-old to get old.
I love
you
that.
have to. So why compete in a market that actually you've been through? So surely the idea is moving forward, not moving back, not competing with 20, 30, 40, but actually to progress and go, I'm 58,
Absolutely.
I'm 60, I'm approaching 60. That should be the progression.
Right, and not buy into the narrative that the goal at some point is to struggle to look and act like a younger version of yourself. Exactly.
And I think this idea of trying to find I think if you embrace your present moment, that's the key.
Yeah.
To actually embrace everything that's about your personality in the moment, whether your body is falling apart, or maybe I might try and mend it together, or I might try and glue it together, but
We do the best we can.
do the best you can for you in the present moment, not trying to be the 20-year-old or 30-year-old. I think.
The woman in the bar had, yes.
Yeah.
Hello. The woman at the
Hello.
bar is Joyce.
Joyce. Hello, Joyce.
Hello. I am 83, so I am old. Don't know if any of you happened to see me on the This Morning TV show with Philip Schofield, but he paid me a compliment. I was on the show because I had written a blog. I'm a blogger. I've been blogging for 3 years. And I had written a blog about sex at 80, which had caused a bit of joy.
Oh.
And of course,
Now I know who you are.
media, which was a very useful thing to do, which allowed me then to take up your agenda, ageism. Yeah. So they put me on under the title of Superstar Granny Sex Blogger. The fact that I was head of a professional body and MBE is not but you put up with that in order to actually get the
I
PR.
tried to help on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were wanting to talk about sex. And then he says, so I'm saying, well, it doesn't actually matter, does it? When you're old, you actually don't know anymore. You don't worry about wrinkles anymore. Because you don't. Your friends are all wrinkled, your lovers are all wrinkled. It's the twinkles that matter. You don't see them anymore when you're old. And it's a lovely state of life to be at when you're not actually seeing them anymore.
Yes.
You're seeing the person,
Yes.
not the age. That's right.
Beyond the skin.
So he's just saying, oh, you know, you've got the idea about that bullying. So you're saying the right thing to be is your own heart. And I said, stop. No way are you allowed to say that. You are saying, by saying young that young is the right thing to be. I am old and I'm proud to be old.
You're old at heart.
And that really hit that. I don't know if it's sort of it went viral on Twitter and everywhere, didn't it?
It's the language that is used so commonly, and I think, like, since reading your book and since really kind of being very attuned to this, I'm constantly stopping and thinking, oh, hang on a minute. Like, what do you do? Do you pull someone up or pull the world up all the time, especially on social media? Are you constantly pointing these language problems out?
In a way that is as neutral as you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I looked this thing and then I went to your bio, and you know, and I saw that you had taken issue with being reduced to that. So that's what I put out. I mean, you know, it was a tiny drop in a river of comments about, you know, sex at 80. But if we don't say anything, nothing changes.
Yeah.
You know, the trick is to say it in a way that puts the question back on the person who has said or done the ageist thing in a way that makes them reflect, because it's only when they reflect that things change. Maggie.
Well, it's a couple of years ago now, but it's also something. I'm 88.
Can everyone hear? Speak as loud as you can.
I'm
I know you have a
88.
big mouth.
Someone said the other day, you don't look 88. I said, how am I supposed to look? I look like I am.
Yeah.
But also, I fell over in a bus, and the driver
Just for
stopped.
attention.
It was the indignity was the worst bit. I sat up. But someone yelled out to the driver, stop the bus, there's an old woman on the floor. And I said, oh, so someone else has fallen over.
My mother used to say she'd get on the bus and look and say, she would, for comic effect, she'd say, look at that ancient crone. And then 2 seconds later she'd go, oh, she's my age. You know? And we do that. It's hard to imagine getting older, especially as a young person. You know, and I don't think that's ageism. But when we internalize the idea that it is an awful thing to be identified as older, when we're offended, when someone offers us a seat on the bus, that is our internalized ageism. And you know, you don't have to say, oh, thank you so much, I would have died without it. But we need to try not to bite the head off of the person who offered.
And I'm now grateful, and I'm even willing to ask for a seat.
Oh, that a girl.
That's good. Because I have problems standing.
Good. Ask for help, ask for help, and
And
practice.
occasionally in London, people will refuse to give you a seat.
Do they really?
Oh, really?
Well, don't come to America.
It's because they don't notice. They're all in their phones. They don't see people.
Yeah.
Sorry, Maggie, can you just
Jacinth, yes?
Yeah.
Yes, see, I remembered her name. My new best friend.
So following on from what you were saying, and also I know in your book you say about ageless, actually fundamentally having ageist connotations. Sorry, about terminology like ageless or grand or things like that. So how do you think we can balance sort of headlines and things like that use terminology that we all maybe respond to, and therefore we might click on something and be open to sort of engaging and thinking, oh, this is interesting, but also those headlines themselves are inherently ageist.
I would
So how
try
do
and
you
take
balance
which
that?
references, I'm sorry, with the beautiful giant hair, I don't remember your name, but what happens if we take age out of the old woman with the gray hair? If we take age out of that sentence entirely, if you referenced something that, you know, makes you look fabulous, fills you
But would
with...
people click on it?
This is, I mean, you know, we've had this conversation a lot, and
Yeah.
I have a lot of arguments with sub-editors, a lot of arguments, almost to the point that I've kind of lost with friends. Because I get so upset about, often a journalist has been quite careful to try and not make a piece ageist. And then a sub will come along
and do a terrible
they'll
headline.
do this quick headline.
It's all about clickbait.
It's all about clickbait. And, you know, the lovely piece that Gillian wrote about Jubiata in the Mail this week, to my mind, it was completely spoiled by the fact that the whole focus of the page was 80.
The big 80.
Eight, the letters 8
Were
and
huge.
0
They
were
were
bigger
huge.
than the
Than the
photo
picture.
of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You know, when Gloria Steinem turned 80, the New York Times wrote this huge op-ed about her on the opinion page about, you know, how fantastic she was, and they put a picture of her when she was 40.
So, it's very, very difficult, and I think
But when we speak up and say that's not acceptable, you know, blah, blah, blah.
mainstream media is definitely inherently ageist.
Yes,
Absolutely.
although part of it is just habit,
it's habit,
you know,
yeah.
it's habit, and what we can't, you know, we can try to get people to break their habits. It's hard to break habits, especially when it comes to values, but it's a task for all of us.
I was just thinking about habit, and the idea it's something that's worn, isn't it? A habit can be, you know, can be worn, or you know, it's what you see as a habit. It's people are you can say that person looks like that. That's the habit they're wearing. So it's kind of a form. But if we were to actually remove age completely and not actually say what age we are. So the fact is that we're pointing to our age. We are saying we are this, therefore we are defined by our age. But if we say we're ageless, actually we have no age.
Well,
Then in a way, you know, then it kind of says then that's speculation.
it's double-edged.
Yeah.
It is, and everything in this arena is double-edged. You know, you said how old you were, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is one of, you know, sort of ironically, one of the trickiest things about saying your age. I think it's important to say how old we are, because otherwise people think we're embarrassed about it or want to be taken for younger. But the next step is to say, why do you want to know? Or what changed in your mind once you had a number? I just, on my book tour, someone said, say I was born in 1952. And no one, then you've answered it, but no one can do the math. And so there's that. But you know, I don't love the term ageless because it's complicated in exactly the way you beautifully framed. You know, there's no right answer. But an interesting point about age is, you know, all prejudice is based on stereotyping. All stereotyping is obviously wrong and misinformed. But as we age at different rates, you line up a bunch of 7-year-olds, they look pretty much the same, and they are. They're all utterly unique, of course, but we, you know, so, developmentally, socially, they are similar in terms of their physical and mental capacity. They are way more homogenous than a group of 47-year-olds, which is way more homogenous than a bunch of 67, and so on. The longer we live, the less that number says about us, so it is important in the next breath, and I know it's a complicated ask, but this shit is complicated, and it's different for each one of us. If you can't bear to say how old you are, don't. You know? I mean, do what works for you.
Sorry, can the lady? Sorry, I don't know your name.
The red dress?
Me, my name is Siti. Just to follow up from that last question, we've all identified that that's a difficult thing to kind of classify and trying to break down that classification. But coming from a Marcom's background, I think the reason why they're calling you super granny, you know, whatever, is just because that's what our audiences identify with. And 80 is what people have in their minds. Oh, you don't look 80, but exactly what the lady in front said. Well, how am I supposed to look at 88 or whatever? I'm 47, and when I say that to my colleagues who are all millennials, and I'm like, oh my God, you don't look like. How am I supposed to look? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's perceptions which we obviously need to break, but we can't do it in this room alone. So we have to kind of work with the audiences and their preconceptions and their stereotypes whatsoever, and break that through whatever channels that we can.
And that is
Hear, hear.
absolutely why we are trying to, what we're trying to do. That's exactly why I'm trying to get people together. You know, it's not, of course it's lovely to come together and have a drink and chat, but I want everyone to be able to leave this room and actually tell other people and if you're on social media, you know, make a point of sharing these things on social media, because that collective vision
Absolutely.
will be joining up
And
the
you
dots,
can never
will be making a difference.
You can never tell, like, what conversation in the elevator that was
Yeah.
overheard by the dog watcher's uncle ends up, you know, really, you know, propagating or getting into the ears of someone in the media or blah, blah, blah. You
And
can't tell.
we've all got our own kind of areas, haven't we? You know, I mean, I know that there are lots of people in this room today, quite a few people from fashion. I know probably have never had so many models of a certain, you know,
Powerful women.
in a space outside of a catwalk. Influencers, people that can really make a difference and are really making a difference. I mean, so many people in this room I can see who I follow on Instagram and who I follow on Twitter and who are really changing the way people are talking about all of this.
Thank you.
And this is fantastic. So I'm really proud to you know, be part of a movement.
Can I ask, like, really simple question? What is the vision?
The vision is to, well, I would say the vision is to make prejudice on the basis of age as unacceptable as any other form of prejudice.
And therefore what?
Therefore, in a ideal rainbow unicorn filled universe, we are each judged by what we're like and what we're capable of, rather than by what gender we are, how old we are, or who we sleep with, or where we're from.
I think one of the things that really I have in my head a lot now, for when I'm thinking something and I'm kind of saying to myself, okay, am I thinking ageist thoughts? Am I being ageist here?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I know I am. So that, but I think about the way you say, if you take that term away and you replaced it with gender
Human.
or skin colour,
Human, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, I have another blog called Yo, Is This Ageist, which is a Q&A blog. You know, and really, because people don't know, these are new ideas, right? But if you saw the same comment or thought the same thought on the basis of race or sex, and your antenna went up or whatever, and you said whoop whoop, that's really not okay. A similar comment on the basis of age is probably not okay. You know where we see this everywhere now in the U.S. And here, but perhaps less, is around the age of presidential candidates. It would be fantastic if some wonderful young candidate showed up, but to say you are too old to be president or dog catcher is like saying you are too queer, you are too fat, you are too black. It is bigotry, right? So my goal would be to have people understand that.
To have people feel the same way about those words.
About any
about
characteristic of ourselves that we cannot change.
Yeah.
Should not be, which is pretty much everything but our characters,
So, Joyce.
Yeah. I'd like to say 2 or 3 different things if you don't mind. One is, I think we have a problem, don't we? And that is that the stereotype of old age, which is so wrong, is actually being constantly promulgated by the media. There's always negative things. The media is only interested in the bad stories.
Or extremes.
Yeah. Alzheimer's is increasing, as you said. It's
actually not.
Rates of Alzheimer's are dropping fast.
Yeah. We have, at the same time, the aging charities who ought to be against ageism actually constantly put out negative things because that's what they're doing.
They get funding that way.
Problems that need to be solved. So we've got a constant stream of negativity going into the media, and there is actually no one responsible for putting the positive side in. And there is a huge
Maggie's on it.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah.
We're on it.
That's what we desperately need, is the positive side,
Yeah.
so that the picture of old age improves.
We need that.
Absolutely.
And, I'm particularly, I'm sure the people here would agree, that there's something happens to you once you're over 70, 75. It is actually a new landscape.
Absolutely.
You have started thinking differently. You don't worry about wrinkles, ambitions faded away. You start becoming serene. You enjoy life in a you said it, far more intense way. You live every day very deeply. You're very close to your friends. And it's much, much better life. And the evidence is showing it too, that people are happier in their old age and are more satisfied with their lives than they are at any other age. But that is not being put out as a piece
We
of
absolutely
information
need to
people in
put
their
that out there.
who are frightened of getting old. if we could get that out, then we have less people afraid of getting, and more comfortable with it.
Looking forward to that.
Looking forward to it.
Forward
And
to
the
it.
employers will begin to understand too that we haven't actually, that they haven't all gone decrepit. We need to change the image of old age, that stereotype.
We absolutely need that, and I always cop to a positive bias, but it is not that way for everybody. And I think we don't want to be framed as Pollyannas that ignore the very real challenges of getting older, but simply to point out that they are real and they're reinforced by an ageist society, right? That we only ever hear the negative because that's what gets the clicks, that's what gets the charities funded, as you point out, Joyce. But not to be, not to ignore the fact that it is different, that class matters, that gender matters, and that we need to address the challenges as well as the opportunities.
But only up to a point. I mean, I'd like to make 2 points. Samuel Gray, who is an amazing public health professor and created NHS Choices, said that it's not until your late 90s that aging actually affects you. Up till then, it's only relatively insignificant what the effects of aging are, until your late 90s. Until then, you can do something about it. You can actually have an influence on how well you age.
That's true.
And that is not dependent, and the research shows it, is not dependent on how much money you have over a certain level. If you have a certain level of financial security, after that, you are not happier with more money. You are actually, what is important in life is actually social connections, which people can do. There is help out there to
and
make
where women
social.
have an advantage.
And
This
women
is
have an
Maggie's
advantage.
book, Aging
Aging
Joyfully.
Joyfully.
How to age joyfully. My book is coming out in July, and it's a compliment to Ashton. It's the other side of the coin. I absolutely agree. Ageism is everywhere, but we ought to, as Joyce says, and I'm a huge fan of both. We really have to celebrate aging. We're all living longer. We've got to make the most of it, and it's wonderful. It's the most incredible. I'm going to be 68 in 3 weeks, and I've never been happier since I retired. I've taken up dancing, and dancing, if you take up dancing, I can tell you this, there's a 76% reduction in your risk of dementia if you dance regularly 3 times a week, and it brings you joy and it gets you fit. But there are so many different things we can do, and we should all just grab it, because, as Joyce says, it's a wonderful stage of aging. David Bowie said, aging is an extraordinary process where you become the person that you've always wanted to be.
That's right.
And that's so true. So I think we should all go out there. We should all say how old we are and defy these awful visions of ageism and negativity, because it's not true. I'm vice chair of a charity called Open Age. We have 6,000 members. They are aged between 50 and 100. They dance, they do drama, they paint, they do make jewelry, they've been on the National Theatre stage. They exemplify what aging joyfully is all about. And they have taught me that literally you can come from the Grenfell estate, which is where a lot of our people came from. We lost 3 members in the fire. You can have absolutely nothing. You can have arthritis, you can have whatever, and you can still be happy and enjoy life and make the most of it. And if you want to find out some more tips, my book has got over 150 tips on how to age joyfully, and go for it. We really need to join together to change the vision of what aging is all about. I'm passionate about it.
Okay. I think it's really good to hear from a man in this.
Yeah.
I think I was building on the last 2 points. Well, I'm James, I'm 53.
Sorry, James.
I've not experienced, as far as I'm aware, ageism yet. It's probably the white man thing. I'm waiting for it to happen at some point, and I'm prepared for it, but it hasn't happened yet. But that isn't my point. My point really is that in the rainbow unicorn world you spoke about, do we necessarily need to give up some of the positives of ageing and being older, the advantages that we get? Sometimes it's about respect from other people and things like that. Are there advantages we necessarily would need to give up in order for
That's a
age
good
to be
question.
equal?
I mean, there are relatively few. I mean, it depends on the culture. You know, there are cultures where older people are revered. By the way, we need new. Sorry, brief tangent. I'll come back to that. But we need rituals, and you know, longer lives are a new phenomenon, and roles and institutions were created when lives were shorter. And an example is that in Japan, when you turn 60, you have a happy-ass party that celebrates that you have entered this wonderful, it's a completely positive thing. Why don't we do that, for example? You put your finger on something important. This does not make me sometimes popular, but I do not think you deserve more respect because you are older. I think all human beings deserve equal respect. Right? And we sure as shit do not deserve less of it. And I'm afraid that in hyper-capitalist societies and hyper-consumer and hyper-youth-obsessed society, thank you America, you know, that older people tend to be demoted. So we surely do not deserve less respect. But what I would like to see, especially as we all live so much longer, you know, is to always beat back old versus young framing. That's only a distraction, right? That to look at how do we build age equity across the lifespan of longer lives? How do we offer more support to younger people when they have kids? Perhaps they could take, that's not my original idea, but take longer to establish themselves in their careers. So they have more time at home when your kids are little and you really need them. And then, you know, build up our work lives so that we're working the longest hours in our 50s and 60s,
Well,
right?
we haven't got children
If
at
you're
home,
able.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're able. I do want to say, look, our aging is hostage to an enormous number of factors beyond our control. The churnings of the global economy that are screwing young people are also depriving, you know, millions of older people of pensions and economic security. We need to come together at all ages because, I mean, you know, the uncertainty around everything, you know, everything is changing. So how do we build intergenerational teams to address whether it's, you know, whether it's clean up the planet or clean up the median strip or whatever. You know, I think that's the way, because once you work with people who are different from you in whatever way, then it's much more difficult to be prejudiced against them.
Just before, I know there's some people that I just want to say something because otherwise I'll forget and we can come back to it. But one of the things that, you know, was the intergenerational inequality report that came out recently in the UK, and the way the media completely approached that and turned it into this real battle
Because it's
between
clickbait. Everyone getting along just fine.
Yeah, and it takes everyone's eye off the fact that inequality is actually nothing to do with age. It's to do with social policy and the way that society is
Right.
created.
The 1% and the 99% are made up of people of all ages.
That's right.
I was going to go on to make another point, and
I'm sorry. I'm
That,
sorry.
it's absolutely fine. It had gone. It was flying out of the room. I'll come back in one
versus
sec.
young.
Helen.
I mean, I was just wanting to pick up on this point because it was something I was going to say earlier too. One of the things that gets in the way of me talking about my experience as an older woman in my workplace, where pretty much everybody is younger, is I actually am privileged, right? It is actually a fact that things like, I mean, in London certainly, our generation is much, much more likely to own our own homes. And if I look around, there are people in the young people, 20s, 30s, even 40s now in my workplace, they just can't do that in the way that I did. And there is this is real, the thing about what's happened. And it's partly to do with what's happened in the global economy, but it's also to do with the welfare state, it's to do with education, it's to do with lots and lots and lots of things.
School debt in the US.
And so it also gives us an opportunity, because one of the reasons we're all here is we're economically powerful in a way that women of our age wouldn't have been a couple of generations ago, or a very small minority would have been. So that economic power, which is enabling us to find a voice in the world, because let's be realistic, that's why it's happening, because they have to begin to listen to us, is also conversely affecting other people. So it's not
zero sum though, right?
No, but it's complicated.
It's
just what you say.
every piece of this is incredibly complicated, but you know, we really need to be on the alert for it being framed in terms of, you know, older people sucking all. You hear it about the baby boom in New York, of which I am a dead center. We were born at a time, we were incredibly lucky in when we got born, and I don't blame younger people for being envious and pissed off about it, but that doesn't mean that we did something bad, right? And if we don't work together to address these issues, the issue is inequality, right? It is, if there is enough to go around if rich people had less, and I'm not talking rich in this room, I'm talking mega rich, right? So this zero-sum framing, I mean, an example of ageism towards younger people is this idea that millennials are frivolous and self-obsessed and change jobs all the time. When we were 30, we did the same thing, right? Those are cohort effects, not age effects. It's another example in which age is not the predominant thing. So really listen for old versus young framing, which the media loves. The media thrives on conflict, right? And we are never, I mean, how are we going to address, you know, the huge changes facing the world unless all ages come together and focuses on the issues, on what you know, which are different for each of us, but we each have a set in common, right? So come together around the issue across these divisions.
That's right.
Sorry, there was another, yeah.
I'm probably quite different to all of you here. I'm
I can't hear you.
a dentist. And my name's Susan. I'm a dentist.
Can you speak any louder?
I certainly can.
Excellent.
Susan, perhaps you'd stand up.
I think I can certainly stand up.
Look, she can stand up.
And I think what you're all talking about is fantastic. And I didn't know about you before, but I watched your TED talk and I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
But I think we have an audience here of really amazing people, because in the context that I work, you can have two 75-year-olds, one after the other, coming to the surgery, and one is amazing and has a fantastic attitude, and they are just a brilliant person, whatever they look like, or however I might say, decrepit or not decrepit they look, and the next one comes along and in a way wants to be treated as if they're an older person, grumpy, rude, it's actually amazing
Entitled.
how different two people are. And I think, you know, when I look at this lady, who I didn't know about before, I mean, you know, it doesn't matter to me what age she is. She's got an amazing attitude and amazing, just wonderful to be around. So I think that's, you know, sometimes older people, I don't want to say ask what they get, but it is quite interesting how one responds to a person depending on how they respond to you.
I used to say to my mother, just because you're old, you don't get to be rude. I mean, that it's complicated. It's always complicated. We can sometimes, I mean, I think the sort of overarching point there is 170 whatever year old is really different from another one. And, you know, if you are a curious person when you're 6, you're going to be curious when you're 106. If you're not, you're not, right? These are not generally things that change with age. If you are, you know, but we do also internalize these messages that to age is to become, you know, grumpy or shut in or whatever. And, you know, it's worth pointing out to people that, you know, if you hear your friends saying, you know, they're too young to do that, I'm too old to do that, age is never the reason. You might be too lazy, you might be too experienced, you might be too smart. But this is back to your point, it's never about age. It's about the personality and the opportunities and the million other individual specifics.
And one of the things we were talking about earlier, actually, which we were kind of leading into this, I mean, obviously my interest, I'm really interested in the fashion industry. There's, you know, that's my background, that's where I come from. You get it. And we were talking earlier about how these ideas at the moment in fashion, that there are really only two ways to be.
Oh yeah.
So you are either, you know, an Iris Apfel, purple wearing, outrageous, flamboyant person, or you are the kind of, or you're kind of allowed to wear beige and elastic waist slacks. I was about to say saga person. It's a bit rude, really, isn't it? Because they are trying saga. Anyway, so you're not allowed these nuances. You know, there are only two ways to visually be an older woman.
And
at
yet,
the moment.
there's this curious thing. I'm dying to ask the group that as an older woman, you become, you know, and we're part of it, our own misogyny, our own revulsion at our own aging, the feeling that our bodies are failing us just because they're experiencing these natural transitions. So where does that shame and disgust come from? So it's all bad, 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 awful, awful, worse, awful. And then, when you get really old, there's this fetishization of the super stylish. What catalyzes that shift? And is there something in this room, which you all know much more about that universe than I do, that we could turn to our own purposes?
I'm actually going to, there's at least 3 people actually in this room who I think will have really interesting ideas about that. Lucy.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Lucy Jones. I've spent many years of my life, well actually about probably 27, in fashion education. And it's really, really interesting, this conversation that we're having tonight, because many of my students, well, possibly all of my students, begin their crit by saying, I am designing for, 18 to 25-year-olds. At which point I always used to interject, excuse me, so I can't wear your things? And so the jaw drops. And then I always used to come up with a couple of anecdotal stories about friends of mine who actually are now dead, but who were special customers of Brown's of Moulton Street, who were phoned up and said, oh, the latest collection is in from Jean Muir or from Sonia Riggio, will you come in? And she used to buy, and the jaw drops even further. This realization that when you get older, you have more money to spend on things, on product, on fashion,
you don't lose
on
interest.
looking good. Young students just don't realize this, and I spent the majority of my 27 years really, emphasizing this fact that age is an attitude, and that I didn't want to hear what age they were designing for, and that it was this attitude. And I think we have to get right down to the very, very basic of education and get that sort of thing right, so that the young people coming up realize that age is not a problem, it's not ugly, and it's affluent, and we are all customers. That's
Thank you.
basically it.
Zoe,
And thank you, Goldie, for doing so much to put that message out there.
would you really mind if I put you on the spot a minute, Zoe?
Me?
Yeah, because I know that you're working with Graduate Fashion Week,
Yes.
and I know that that kind of ties into what Lucy was saying.
Yeah.
That I've been trying to talk to a lot of people that are showing at Graduate Fashion Week, and trying to find out if on Graduate Fashion Week catwalk we are going to be seeing diversity that also includes.
This is when
all
fashion
ages.
schools.
Yeah, fashion schools. We're just coming up to that time in the process. And have you kind of had those conversations with anyone? Because I know that you're dealing with some of the guys. I know Liverpool specifically.
Yeah, I mean Liverpool tackle diversity pretty well.
Yeah.
Partly they have a guy who's our creative, Andrew Ibby, who is one of the very few black academics. So he pushes things in certain ways and as very diversity and inclusivity focused. But
sorry, and I'll put you right on the spot.
Including age. Including age.
And on at Liverpool, we've even got one of the communication students who's created a visual blind magazine.
Yeah.
It's all braille based. As far as I mean, I would say Generation Z, which is the students, so 13 to 24, are much more looking at uniqueness and individuality. There is a little bit of a
That's good.
beige phase, and it's not, everyone's different, and it's not, as we're saying about the old and then the young, no, you can't judge a whole generation, but we do a lot of analysis on generations and consumers for our clients, so you are able to make some tribe-based grouping and judgment, and millennials are less open to diversity in the same way. So this young cohorts are quite disruptive. I mean, certainly the ones we're dealing with, this is quite, and actually the funny thing, because I've had a meeting just before this about it, it's not just about ageism, but just in general, their whole approach is looking for a new way, and actually going a little bit anti-fashion in general, but that's just about fashion, a little bit more open. So I think with graduates, yes, I would say there's definitely scope for pushing more of a diverse catwalk. The catwalks aren't organised by the students though, so you are talking to the academia, and that's the problem.
And I think that's the thing, you know, Lucy, I know that we try to have these conversations with the heads of schools and with the people that
it's
are,
the heads that have got problem,
and actually trying.
Apart from like an Andrew and some of those, there's a lot of safety, but I think the more their budgets are challenged, the more it's like when you're in a recession, you have to be more disruptive and open and creative in your thinking of how you do things, and I think that then brings a slightly more open mind. So I think they're at the moment, all of their budgets, they're all a bit screwed, all the universities, so I think it will give more opportunity, openness of all angles, including ages.
Sorry, Jacinth?
I mean, I think from my experience, I've been very encouraged lately by the number of students who've reached out to me at fashion schools who are doing projects on ageing. Now, it's possible that they feel more comfortable reaching out to me because I'm younger, possibly, don't know. But
a culture shift is afoot. Aging is getting more
known.
That it's not, I don't think it is just about heads. I think it comes back to this intergenerational engagement, because when I often speak to the students, they're really interested, but they're still quite disconnected. And when I then say to them, well, what about your mum? They'll go, oh yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm like, well, there you go. So you're completely separated. And actually, if you were, and I think part of the problem with a lot of fashion courses is it's about creativity rather than maybe even a commercial sense, or think about what the consumer really wants. And they're going to be designing from what they know, and if what they know is just people who are like them around them, then in a way, why on earth would they design for other ages? And that's why we need to be.
That's why we need to come together in rooms of all
back
ages.
to this whole each generation thing.
That comes from the top as well, because I think it's if their teachers are, if they're taught in a certain way to be much more open, and that they don't have to be restricted, and they are pushed to do research around stuff, I think that will.
That then encourages.
Right, and then but the teachers have to get over their own internalized.
Well, it's interesting, just a question for you. Do you have many mature fashion students, or are all the students, or 99% of them, sort of age 25 and under?
That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have students myself, but I think on fashion design courses, it is mostly young, but not in general. I think on fashion design, it is more young. But I think on some of the courses around like fashion psychology and things that are a little challenging thinking around it, and communication, maybe even fashion marketing, I would say is probably more mature. On fashion design, I would say it's predominantly, the young.
Yesterday I was doing a fashion illustration course, and we were doing the typical long, slim, young woman. And I remember someone who, there you go, and someone said, and she said to the illustrator who's designing, she said, do you ever draw them to be different, like younger, older, or shorter, or bigger? He went, no, I mean it's all about aspirational, conceptual. And then these ladies told me that they said, well, we had a friend whose daughter went to fashion school, and she did these amazing illustrations for design, and then she was useless when it actually came to making the design that suited their bodies. And then so there is this conceptual versus.
The body acceptance movement, you know,
Got a
has
lot
a
to
lot to
learn.
teach us,
Yeah.
right? Because I think it's
Yeah.
helped us see that those messages benefit the diet industry and benefit the diet pill industry and have nothing to do with what's good for us.
I don't want to get too embroiled in fashion because I can see some people's eyes glazing over.
Could I just make a comment to you? Because you slightly stereotyped. You talked about you can either dress outrageously or in beige.
I
I've
wasn't
never
saying
worn
that.
beige in
No,
my
I mean I
life.
wasn't saying that's how. I wasn't saying at all that. I'm saying that's the kind of way at the moment that we are being told there are these two ideas that you can either be, I suppose, the classic I should use rather than beige. So you can either be classic or you can be outrageous. And actually, the reality, of course, is that most of us don't dress to either of those extremes.
Right.
I mean, if I could afford it, I'd dress in Jean Mirror.
That's what we're lacking. We're lacking really good clothes for older women that are stylish.
We have a great example in the corner with Jacinth's bias cut, who is providing the most wonderful clothes to show us. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I try and bring it back to this style thing because I think it's really important because I think there is something about.
Can everyone hear?
Yeah, coming back to the stylist, I think it's really important because I think there is something about shame around being older. And big shame around you're not supposed to be looked at and you're supposed to sit in a corner and be dignified.
Or be outrageous, which
is
I think
okay. Be a bit of a clown and that's okay and that's kind of counterintuitive and that's okay. But I think fundamentally it's to do with sexuality. And sexuality as you get older becomes this kind of slightly weird, it's all a bit shameful and really you don't want to be seen or looked at. And I think that is what's tied up in all
only
the stuff.
we can only, our insecurities can only be exploited if we consent to it. I know that's a really easy thing to say. And that we have a lifetime of overcoming the idea that, you know, crepey skin and crow's feet are embarrassing. It is the work of a lifetime, and we must engage in it together. But, you know, older women are happier. For many older women, late life is the best time of all. People have fabulous sex if they wish to be sexually active and have someone to do it with, because of course we get better at it. Or we like forget how, you know. And so, but it has, I mean, you know, if you think of your friends who are sexually active, they are, and I'm not saying that should be the ideal, right? If you aren't interested anymore or whatever, it's really important to break free of an idea that there is some right path. If you wake up in the morning, you are aging successfully. But they are not, thank you, they're not the youngest, they're not the thinnest, they're not the prettiest. They are the people who know their lovers are lucky. I am sort of talking about women, right? And thank you. And a way to get around that is to fight against this idea that old equals ugly. I mean, in the beginning, I thought I was the only person who looked in the mirror, you know, and went, "Hey, you know, how did this happen?" Well, you know, that I think it is the most universal manifestation of internalized ageism. Fight that. You know, I mean, what the lines on your face say, "I did these things."
Yeah.
You know, I did these things. Why? You know, when we, you know, when we dye our hair just to cover the gray and don't like doing it, or lie about our age, or leave early accomplishments off our resumes, we reinforce age shame. No judgment. No judgment. You know, I've had women say, "Look, if I didn't dye my hair, I'd get fired and I have children to support." And I wish that I could say, "Oh, you're crazy, honey." I'm sure she's not crazy, right? And plus, even if she were crazy, she's got to do what she's got to do. But doing those things is not good for us because it's like, you know, it's like a person of color trying to pass for white, or a gay person trying to pass for straight. It's rooted in shame about something that shouldn't be shameful. And we need to battle against that shame between our own ears, and then together as women support each other. Support each other. Don't say you look, you know, don't be more generous, right? Be less critical with yourself and each other. try not to say a thing, a bad thing, on the
Agreed.
basis of age.
So Kerry, sorry, I know you're being patient.
Kerry, can I just pick on something you said there about
Absolutely.
the woman feeling that she had to look younger at work? I write a lot and I do a lot of work in trying to combat ageism in the workplace. And I think it's crucial for women to, obviously, we're living longer. In the UK, state pension age has risen, but there's been no dialogue between the government and industry to figure out where these women are going to be working. So a lot of work has to be done. And I meet women who can't get jobs and they're going out and they're spending their redundancy money on cosmetic surgery to look younger at job interviews. And there's so much discrimination. Now men are also discriminated against. I met somebody just 2 days ago who'd been the CEO of a company in a job interview, got to the final stage, and the younger line manager, the question was, do you have a mortgage? Do you have children to support? And then it was, why would I hire you if you're not going to be hungry in this job?
Because I know.
I know.
And
I had a woman interviewed, and the feedback that my background was headhunting. And I had a female candidate in her 50s, and the feedback I got from a younger person who actually was removed from the company within 24 hours as a result of this, thank goodness, I intervened. But it was, if we hired her, it'd be like working with my mother. And I said, what about the gentleman who did this? Wouldn't that be like working with your father? And that's different. So ageism does catch up with men, but I think a little bit later.
Oh yeah. Women are never the right age.
No.
Women stop being promoted into managerial positions at 34 because we might have children, and we start getting discriminated against because we might be unable to have children, right? So there's a sweet spot of about 5 minutes. But you're right that men do experience it. I mean, there was a quote when ageism in tech started to get attention in the U.S. Hello, it was the first time white men had experienced discrimination. So, which is fantastic that it came to attention. And there was this quote that is burned in my memory, an article in the New Republic of a man who he was 40. He came to a dermatologist for hair plugs, Botox, whatever, and he said, I have a key job interview with a bunch of young people, and I can't look like I have a mortgage and 2 little kids. Right? So, but women all have it worse. I mean, we know that having a child makes you less desirable to an employer, but more desirable if you're a man, right? So, I feel really strongly that it's the intersection of the two that we need to call this crap out. And thank you for doing it.
Sorry, you've been really patient. Thank you.
Rachel, hello.
Yes.
Magnificent midlife.
Yes.
Fabulous.
I just wanted to reinforce that idea that we're not looking at just discrimination against and fear of great age. It's a lifelong issue, and it starts. When Cara Delevingne was chosen as the face of an anti-aging cream at 25, that
was working.
That is where we really need to tackle it from 20, because that's when it kicks in for women. I've had young
Or
women.
preemptive Botox.
Exactly. It's
When I
just
turned 26, I was seeing loads more ads saying anti-aging.
They're coming up on all your Facebook and everything. Yeah.
And then that, builds into why younger women fear menopause, because we buy into that notion that our value is our beauty, our value is our youth, our value is our fertility. Bollocks to that. We have so much to offer at every stage of our lives, but this needs to be a lifelong effort from all of us.
Lifelong and collaborative.
Sorry, Ruth, you've been very patient.
It's one thing to say, I'm afraid I'm going to get very emotional. It's one thing to say that it's our attitude and that we can be sexual and that we can be beautiful, but there's the person that's accepting it. When you go out for employment and you say age doesn't matter, the guy that hires you, it's got to not matter. When you say you want sex, the guy that, for me, because I'm heterosexual, even when I'm in Brighton, the guy that has to want it. That they have to look at you, and what is it my friend said, no woman is sexy to a man after they're 40. Well, that's, and you're saying no, but it's what happens when you go out there. I would love to dance. I would adore to dance. And when I go to dances, I don't have a partner.
I don't have a partner.
All right? And I go there, but I'm 85. There's a difference. And when I go there and I say to the guy, because I say, you have to be brave, you have to say it makes no difference. So I say, let's dance. And they say, oh, I'm sorry. I hurt my hip in the gym. I hurt my knee in the gym. And then 5 minutes later, their hip in there and their knee are jumping all over the dance floor. It takes two to tango. It takes two to make that happen. We can say, okay, we're just fine. We've taken responsibility for our aging, and then we go out and try to get. I'm a comedian, and I'm a good comedian, and I try to get a job in one of the bigger clubs, and they say, no, all she talks about is age. Well, what the fuck am I supposed to talk about? And I'm funny.
You are right.
But I can't get someone to dance with me, and
You
I
can
can't
dance
get
on your
someone to
own. You can dance without a partner.
Cute.
Yeah, and you can dance without a partner.
That is why we need a broad-based social movement like the women's movement, because unless we
Well, how do we
change
do
the
it,
fucking
Ashton?
That's what we're all here for.
How do we
you know.
do it? No.
But I
having
ideas, we're
conversations
together,
like
we can do
this.
this.
And I agree with you also that we have control over
Read
the way
my book.
we age. I started comedy when I was 70, and my memory is better now than it's ever been. My mobility is better than it's ever been, and my sense of life, my happiness, my participation in life is better than it's ever been, and that's at 85. But I still can't get anyone to go to bed with me, and if you know anyone...
Lots of people age 40 can't get about 30 or 20
I don't
can't
give a
get...
fuck about the people that are 85. That's the point.
It might be controversial to say it, and
I feel for
the
people,
whole
nobody's
this
feeling
we
me,
don't
that's
have to dye our hair and whatever, but I think, what if you want to? What if you want both
Exactly.
sides? Like, one of the
Do what you want to do.
I'm not saying
I'm only talking in that context about the people that have experienced this journey.
If you're going to aging gracefully is letting it all go. And I think there is the other thing of like, it's each to their own. And I think if you want to, if you want to stay looking a certain way, if it makes you feel better.
Absolutely. Same with cosmetic surgery. If that's what you need to feel beautiful and confident in the world, more power to you.
And we do need to be really careful, because I know on social media, you know, where we're all spending a lot of time, there is a real group, certain groups on social media that are very I'm trying to find the right words so I don't come across. But you know, they're very preachy, and they're like, oh my god,
of how you must age.
yeah, you dye your hair, you're not coming
It's a
into the group.
free-for-all.
You're not coming
And
into
it
the group.
should be.
You're not, you know, you have chosen to continue, and I'm getting quite personal, obviously, about this, you know, because I have got blonde hair. I haven't actually got much grey hair, but there are certain groups on Facebook that won't allow me to even voice my opinion because I don't happen to have grey hair.
My 9-year-old
It seems
asked me what
crazy.
feminism was this morning, because they were talking about, I'm like, what is feminism? It's choice, that's it.
Yeah.
End of. It's just having a choice to make.
But the culture imposes, the culture reduces our choices. And if we don't act together collectively in massive numbers to confront bias in the underlying culture, think where we would be without the women's movement. We still have a long way to go, but we are talking now about the role, not just of women in the world, but of older women in this room, right? That is why we need a grassroots movement that calls out and makes people aware of age discrimination to start with, and then to see that it's, you know, a structural issue.
So it's raising awareness. It's having these kind of conversations. But what concerns me a little bit is that it gets stuck there.
Yeah.
And we get stuck in this arena whereby it's so problematic. And there's a kind of idea of it being.
What we're stuck with?
Well, also, I'm not great at thinking of the words for this at the moment. But there's a kind of porn aspect to it. That's the only word I can think of. So this kind of, this is where we are. Let's talk about this in such a way that I think it's like compassionate aging, that kind of area where all poor us, aren't we being discriminated against, rather than actually being solution focused.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah, I know, and that's but currently around a lot of this topic, I think perhaps because it's still very new, in the UK. I think it's still quite a new idea.
Yeah.
That people are almost stuck at that point at the moment, rather than actually saying, okay, we've raised awareness, we've come together, now let's generate solutions.
But, I mean, I can't talk about this without a big grin on my face, and I am not, I am anything but a Pollyanna. I'm a cynic by nature. The culture is changing. Aging is popping up all over.
Yeah.
This shit is happening because there are so many older people in the world. Raise awareness of ageism at an individual level. Bring people together to make that connection to, oh, it's not me. It is it is me. I need to confront this legacy. This older people are the most ageist of all because we have had a lifetime to internalize these ideas, and most of us, it simply never occurred to us to challenge them, right? And that is uncomfortable. Once you start to, you see it. Spark that process. I mean, think of it as a fire. Think of it as a million sparks. That each of those, not some people won't want to do it. Some people won't take it any further. No judgment, whatever. But some of those fires are going to ignite bigger fires, for shit sure. And there's all sorts of larger policy discussions, suggestions in the book in every arena. How to talk to your doctor, how to talk to your employer, But that's how it happens. It happened with the women's movement, which is real and transformed the lives of women around the world. We still have a long way to go. But pair it with ageism, with a struggle against ageism, with an awareness of ageism, and we will change the world. We already are.
We change the world. Okay, so we'll take another couple of comments, and then I know there's a piece.
Oh, we don't
in the
have
book
to. I don't care.
No, I'd like to. Okay. So, sorry.
I just wanted to pretty much add on to what you were saying before, and also what you just brought up about start a fire. I don't know if because I'm on Instagram a lot, there is an advertiser that does anti-flush underwear.
Anti what?
Hot flashes.
Oh, okay. I thought you said anti-flush.
Yeah, they market it as like anti-flush, right? Flushing.
Okay.
Anyway, but when they first started their social media campaign, the women were like 25 years old. And so, of course, I chimed in, like, this woman doesn't even know what a hot flash is.
How to spell menopause.
Yeah. And I wasn't the only one. There were hundreds of women coming on there saying, why are you using this model who's obviously 25 or 30 when you're marketing to obviously over 40 or 50? Well, I just saw their campaign again. It's women over 40 and 50. So it does
There's
work.
enough people listening.
It does.
I mean, one of the products in the goodie bags tonight is a company called Lumity, and they're very kindly given us some samples, and as have various other companies tonight for the goodie bags. And I'm only going to talk about Lumity because when we opened the products, we've had this conversation with Lumity quite a bit. We opened the products, and it clearly says on them still anti-aging. We're working with brands like that. Lumity really want to change that branding, but they can't change it overnight. So yes, having these kind of conversations with brands, and I think you're probably talking about Cucumber with the anti-flush. Yeah. And we keep having these conversations with these brands.
So they've gone back.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's great when
You're going dancing with all of us. Like,
Yeah. Thank you.
I really do that. I love dancing.
Give lessons later. When you're having a dialogue, it's great to have a dialogue in the room with people that understand and want to change. But you don't have the power to be, you're preaching to the converted.
Yeah.
So you've got to have the dialogue with people that make the decisions.
Exactly.
When we talk about the students, they're there to be educated. So of course they don't know. Of course they're not aware of what's
Right, they don't know.
So it's the people that do the advertising, it's the designers, it's the people that do the adverts, the model agencies themselves. So just talking all about that.
And the model agencies themselves, you guys are really making a huge difference.
So there are neutral ways to bring stuff up. ask, what do you think of as criteria for diversity? And if they don't say age, don't say, why isn't age there? Say, how about age?
Yeah.
Right? Or, you know, when someone says something ageist, why would you say that? Why would you assume that? And that, you know, that's how we shift it.
Diversity and inclusion is a big thing, it's a big hot topic right now, and it's kind of like one of the things that you want it to happen because it's the way the world is, but you don't want it to happen just because it's the hot topic. So in 5 years'
because
time,
it's right.
It's going to be something that is natural.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not natural.
So
I've seen a lot of mixed and black couples on TV, but it seems so forced. And it seems so kind of marketed and not authentic. And it just feels like, I don't know any black couple that lives like with 2 kids and in a family. You know, it's more, let's show the single families, the single parents, the single mothers that are raising families. That, do you know what I mean? Just showing it in an authentic way rather than an advertising.
So not just using an older model for the sake of ticking a box.
Absolutely.
Let's have, you know, like let's actually make it very integrated.
Older.
Yeah.
Tick. So who can come for us?
So one of
exactly.
One of the phrases I use a lot is, and I use this to students quite a lot, is diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusivity is being asked to dance.
I heard one better. Inclusivity is being asked to design the dance.
Yeah.
Right? Not just being invited, but
yeah. Because I think it is very easy to have a tick box and have a way that, whether that's including age or gender or race. So yeah, we
but
do
even
need to make
ticking the box is better than not acknowledging the absence of representation. I agree, it's only partway there, but you know, it's a step.
I think it's interesting. Whilst you mentioned it's important that we get companies and brands and powerful people and leaders to take these things on board, I think it's also important for the tens of millions of people out there who don't even know it's a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think all of us can go and speak to 10 people and get them to speak to 10 people. Is that
There
sort
you
of
go.
thing.
Exactly. And you know,
that's
and
exactly what
5
we're
aren't
trying
going to
do.
hear it. And you know, and 2 people are going to wait. You know, 2 years later they're going to go, "Oh, that's what he was talking about." And you know, one will. You just don't know. But if we don't start these million conversations, and you never know which paper airplane you throw out the window is going to land somewhere fertile. Really bad metaphor. All the metaphors in my book are really good ones.
We are going to have to kind of wrap it up, and there's a couple of things I'd like to sort of just draw a close to. I want to thank everybody for coming and for taking part and for talking and for just really joining in the conversation, which is absolutely what we want. We will be holding these In Conversations, Goldie Magazine's In Conversations, monthly. So there'll be lots of opportunity to carry on this conversation, and we do really just want people to go out there and start talking about it on the bus, talking about it, you know, at work, wherever. I'd like to thank the people that have provided for lovely products for our goodie bags tonight, even Lumity, who with their anti-aging. I'd like to thank Susan for, there's the most fabulous toothpaste in this goodie bag, which is just, honestly, if toothpaste can change your life, Susan's
If you get nothing else out of tonight, change your life.
They're also, just to complement the toothpaste, there's also some lovely chocolate. Some kind of chocolate. I wanted to thank everybody that's provided stuff for the guys. And also I really want to thank the Devonshire, who are really lovely and very kind to us for hosting these evenings. And I just want to say once again, thank you so much, Ashton.
All right, now, and it's, thank you. I'm going to say how wonderful this is at the end. I want to say I have some cards which tell you how to reach me. I'm at This Chair Rocks on social media, and I have a This Chair Rocks Facebook page, blah, blah. On the table outside is my mailing list. Those of you who are on my mailing list, like Rachel can attest, that I will never give your email away, and I will not write you very often. So please do sign up or give me your card, then I'll put you on my mailing list. You know, if you'd like to stay in touch,
yeah, and there are also copies available outside.
All right, so I'm going to read one last thing.
And if anyone is missing any copies of Goldie Magazine, if they haven't bought this issue this month, or we've got a few back copies as well. We've also got some copies of the magazine to sell.
I was going to read something about appearance, but I think we've beaten that horse to death. It's ironic to have to focus on, but there's a great quote in here by an ad man who talks about the pleasure of older women's bodies, you know, in nooks and crannies, and then you realize there's something you didn't get to quite yet, right? And I was like, why didn't we think of that, right? I mean, there are so many ways to think differently. This will be short, I promise. It's why I don't like the term agelessness. Offering neutral ground, an end run around all these messy ambiguities, agelessness sounds so seductive, doesn't it? On a tube of eye cream, agelessness promises to erase the trace of time. In pop culture, it describes people who stay young into their 50s and 60s. In gerontology, it suggests that a youthful spirit can remain unaltered within an aging body. None of these scenarios is possible, and they are all ageist. As sociologist Molly Andrews has argued, quote, the current tendency towards agelessness is itself a form of ageism, depriving the old of one of their most hard-earned resources, their age, unquote. Rather, this is agefulness, an accretion of all the things we've done and been, not cataloged or curated, but stored random access within our bones and brains that make us who we are. Hag, spinster, crone, old fogey, old fart, old goat, little old lady, dirty old man, sweet old thing, geezer, biddy, codger, coot. These stereotypes are ours to reject or subvert on the way to more compelling and accurate aspirational identities. At the moment, I'm leaning toward hag, something a driver actually called me last year when I banged on the trunk of his car after he bombed through the pedestrian crosswalk. Hag, outside of Shakespeare, really? Maybe it was my funny fake fur cat hat that undid him, used stylistas will agree. It is a funny hat, but it's a great hat. I wish I were young again. People say this all the time. When pressed, however, few, and in fact none, would actually move their game pieces back to the beginning of the board or anywhere close unless they could transport their present-day consciousnesses along with it back in time as well. Adolescence again, no thanks. I'd love my 18-year-old cartilage back, but I dance more now because I'm less, I go in a big group, you don't need a partner, which helps, truthfully. I'd love my cartilage back, but I dance more now because I'm less self-conscious. I'm not a good dancer, unlike Maggie. We're not having a dance contest. And I prioritize better. Whatever our trajectories, however we have navigated loving and letting go, whether of children or houses or dreams, we are the sum of these experiences and what we learn from them. They make us us. That is agefulness, rich and deep and invaluable.
Actually, I just want to say one more thing, actually. I want to draw your attention.
Oh, no, she's going to undress.
She will. I want to draw your attention to this lovely t-shirt and say thank you so much for my t-shirt.
Thank you.
You know, I think we can combine all of our various different loves of life, and we can wear these words, or we can be more subtle and we can whisper them, but we can make a big difference, and we can all go out there and make a big difference. So yes, thank you for this. I'm happy to wear this. And I'm also, where's courage? Where's courage? It's there.
It's here.
It's here. It is on there. It's on there. It's there. You can't see. So this is the lovely design of this t-shirt. So yes, you see courage is there. And there's also another lady in the room who is wearing some amazingly proud words. So hag, which is, you know, let's use hag again as a positive word. So we can also wear that. And can we look at the back of yours too? Cantankerous. I mean, I love the idea of wearing cantankerous. Thank you so much. And there's going to be, you're having a workshop, aren't you, on Saturday?
The whole idea is to cover is later. Company claims to be consulting Greek words because they're great words.
Yes.
And then loads of fun ones. So one of the things I'm doing actually this Saturday is to have a hang it up day in my flat because I print these words myself onto clothing. So anyone wants to, if they want to turn up, bring their own clothes with them. And
hagify them.
So anyone wants to do that, just let us know.
Yes, hagify.
Yeah.
I love this t-shirt too. I love your t-shirt. Joyce, just a quick word to say, just very briefly about the new campaign.
As of this weekend, I'm launching a new campaign to complement your campaign. Right,
one for everybody.
Yes, that's right. Yours is anti-ageism. Mine is pro being positive about old age. Yeah, so we go together.
Absolutely.
And the biggest problem we have at the moment is this negative view of old age. And I've heard everybody today saying, oh, I'm almost scared of aging. And I think when you are old, you realise what a waste of time that was, thinking that, because actually old age is a nice place to be. And I think we need to sell the idea of old age. In fact, I think old age needs a rebrand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It needs to be explained that it's actually an okay part of a normal human life, and it's nothing to be feared. It's great. So I'm starting a campaign, and so I'm going to pass a leaflet around to get this idea of positive aging, the positive aspects of aging out there into the world. So I'll pass them on. Anybody like to join, and I'd be very glad. I've been talking for ages.
I think this is so cool. If I can
Can I talk to you about dancing a minute?
Yeah.
Please, you're whizzing
like
a young person.
How can we do this? How can we do this? We can do this. I was so chuffed when I saw your tweets on this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.